Hello. Today I'm back on project tasks. I finished doing AIMS version 1.2.0. That's out. Help yourself. It's on Patreon if you're not watching this on Patreon, and it's at a discounted price at the moment if it's of use to you, and that's what this is at the moment. I won't go into what extras I've added to it here, but yeah, it's got some advantages. Anyway, what I want to do today is I'm going to go through. Last year I made this 1 minute long intro, 1.5 minutes long intro for the Highwayman, which is something I was working on if you followed any of my stuff last year, and with WAN and VACE, and I just had nightmares. And as soon as LTX came along, I realised I never really enjoyed WAN and VACE. And powerful, wonderful, great if you've got the GPU for it, but one of the endless problems I've ran into, which I didn't enjoy with it, was one, it took ages on my potato GPU, 12 gigabyte VRAM, and I could live with that. What I couldn't live with was 5 seconds long shots that, if you try to fix anything in them, which I often did have to, contrast blowout. So I never really got anywhere good with WAN and VACE, which was really frustrating. LTX came along and it's way more cinematic, gives us much more access from low level GPU, but it takes a lot of tweaking to get there. And what was an interesting exercise for me to do is what I've done here, which is take the original 1 minute 30 opening scenes that I put together using WAN and VACE and even sky reels for extending it, and recreate it with LTX and see how long it took. And I can tell you it took about a full day and an afternoon, and I'm very happy with it in as much as the things I got working. I'll talk through them once we've had a look at them. What I'm going to share with you today, workflow wise, because I've realised people only show up when there's a free workflow. They're not really in it for anything else, and that's fair enough. But what I'm going to share with you workflow wise today, and it will be linked in Patreon and the free Patreon access, so just head on over there even if you're not a member and download it, will be this, which is basically the ICU LoRA union control workflow with a couple of tweaks. I've coloured it up there because that had me foxed for ages and I need to see it what state it's in, and I'll run it through here. But what I've used it with is a merged green LoRA from Sirax. I don't know if that's how you say his name, but I'll talk through that in a bit. And this was for it didn't work perfectly, but it's worked to a degree. It's usable, and I'll talk through what I've learned of it so far, and I think there can be more figured out from it, and I'm going to, but I wanted to just get this out of the way so that I can get on to the next stuff. And not, so I'm doing it now to share it with you, and also yeah, whatever. So what I'm first going to do is make you suffer 1 minute and 30 seconds of the WAN version of the intro, and then I'll make you suffer a further 1 minute and 17 seconds of the LTX equivalent, and then I'm going to talk through everything I did in that LTX equivalent. It's not perfect. More work wouldn't make it perfect yet because of what I'll explain in a bit. So let me just fire this at you first. This is the WAN one, the opening sequence from last year. I played it before in the other video, but I'll play it again here. If you don't want it, jump forward if you've seen it and you can't be bothered to check it out. Okay, that was a WAN version. I can't remember which version. There's a couple there, but basically that's as good as I could get it with WAN on my machine. Lots of problems with it, and this is the LTX version that is similar. I've redone the shots. We'll talk through it after. Okay, so plenty still wrong there. Lots that's got fixed. It'd be, I could spend ages going into comparisons, but what I'll just do is talk you through it, and then I'll show you the workflow and what I've done and where I've done it, trying to kind of address things. I haven't done it all the way through, but let's just talk through it. So what stayed exactly the same was this intro right up to where the crow flies off. That all stayed the same, didn't touch that. I didn't really need it. And I've talked about that before. Why this scene works quite well is, just to recap slightly, is if you watch it, you'll see anywhere I play it, you'll see these things going past, and you'll realize just how much it jumps. But the reason you don't notice is because it's saying dead centered and just moving forward. So the judder isn't so bad, but it's actually pretty bad judder on that. And I even went through topaz and all sorts of things up to 120. That was back in 2025 when I was trying to resolve perfect frames per second. I don't even go near it now because I don't care. I stick to 24 frames per second. I'll live with it. So all this was the same up to the crow. The music was the same but played slightly differently. I was quite happy to chop it back some because I realised it's all really rather boring. I tend to be. I like old school. Take your time, you know. Anyway, the crow, you know, the blend in, messy, but could be better, but that's okay. I've turned the sound off for volume now, I think. That's why I've got my headphones on, just so I don't make a mistake. Now, from this point on, I was into LTX, and already I preferred it. What I did the last one with on WAN was actually Skyreel's DF model, which allowed you to do these extensions and overlay with 17 frames, and it did a really good job, but it took ages. And also, it was always blurry. I could never get away from the blur. LTX has done a good job here, but what I'm now running into is, because it's an extended length, 10 seconds, and you can see I've actually used, I'll talk through that in a bit. But yeah, I fixed the trees, and it worked with trees, or gave me the illusion it had worked with trees. But the first blend worked, but the second blend, I was basically blending two shots together. So like splicing, like they used to do in films, I believe. I can't remember what you call it, but the film strips, and they'd splice them together and lay a bit over the top. So it's kind of doing that, but using green frames and then driving it through LTX again, and I'll show you how I do that. It works to some extent. It doesn't work perfectly. Now here, I admit, I just laid the frames together, shot this shot going into that shot, and blended it with a transition, a fade transition. Honestly, I couldn't be bothered to do more. It was good enough. Given I wasn't getting perfection elsewhere, there was no point. I can come back and revisit all these. This then dropped down. What I noticed I was getting was, because I was asking for drone shots, it would speed up from the beginning and then slow down at the end. So every shot I got that for doing the requesting drone shots, but I couldn't get it to stop doing that. And so I thought, oh well, I'll take advantage of this to then use this merge green LoRA to see if I can blend between the shots and cut out the slow bits, and it kind of worked, kind of didn't. So here I've got it dropping through the trees eventually into this point. Now you might have noticed this, how I had it before. Oh, wrong one. There's two of these. So the first go at this, first go at this, let's just watch that. Drops down. Watch this bit here and watch the horses. There. So I did and I think that's actually better, to be honest, but I just did a very quick last couple of frames. So I'm using the last frame image to inform the first frame of the next shot, and that kind of works with LTX. Works well enough to get away with it. And then you can actually get away with, the white horse appeared on the next set, but it kind of appeared out of nowhere in such a way that you might get away with that. And you can see where I'm just fading in, and I'll kind of jostle it into the right position and then do a little fading transition. And that really works well enough for what we need for now. But then what I was trying to do here was this frame replacement trick, and it worked for the first bit but didn't work on the second half, and I'll talk through the problems I've discovered, and there you go. And the other thing, what I did in the end was run it through LTX, and it actually put the horse the other way around, which he then does a sudden switcheroo. Horse there does a switcheroo. But the horse comes out of left field. Now that makes more sense than the other one did. So, and this is the fixed part. Once the horse gets to there, we're back. Oh yeah, actually I had to do that. I had to do this kind of tacky time jump thing because I couldn't get it working better, and I wasn't going to give it any more time. And what I'm finding is, as I'll talk in a minute, that the first half of the fix using the merge green works well, but the second half of the clip it's strayed off somewhere else, even giving it first frame last frame control, but we'll talk about that in a bit. So this is where it started getting impressed me actually eventually. Firstly, not this grass situation where the grass suddenly starts growing out of nowhere, but to be honest, compared to the fucking trouble I had with trees moving about with WAN, honestly, I coined this phrase, trees are bastards, because I realised how much of a challenge it was going to be to every shot have all the trees in the same place, because it's really difficult. But commendable to LTX, it's actually held the trees together. I've had no tree trouble, just grass trouble. So let's watch that again. Trees are mostly all right. This grass suddenly appears, but that's okay too. Now, the next thing I want to point out, and this is where I took off for a day until I fixed it, was the quality of faces at a distance, and there is none. But I've updated, actually I might give you that workflow too, but I've updated my workflow for, I'll talk through the workflows in a bit, but check at the faces at distance. Even though they're low quality, they're pretty good considering low VRAM card, and LTX is renowned for blancmanging faces. I mean, WAN, forget it. You saw the state of it at this point was contrast blowout. I learned some tricks once I got to the dialogue scene, and I'll talk about those when I do the dialogue scene, because I will be doing that. The next video will probably actually be batch processing, because I need to talk to you about that, which is now introduced in AIMS 1.2.0, but enough of that for now. So let's look at those faces. Now again, you can see I blended it in with a fade transition there. And what you're also going to notice at this point is the only way I could get this working well was to reverse it and do it backwards. So you're coming from that place where you've got really good face definition and ending up in that place where you've got not such good face definition. Now, if you do it this way round, going forward, it won't do so well. If you go backwards, for obvious reasons, it's starting with really good faces and it'll try harder. But what I forgot about was campfire smoke. So let's watch that. Direction. Boom, and we're going backwards. And the campfire smoke is too. And so's his movements. It goes out of focus. I found LTX does that occasionally on these forward zoom shots. It'll go out of focus. I don't know what it thinks it's focusing on. But yeah, but to be honest, I'm happy with this shot for what it is. Now there's another really bodgy part because I had to, goes into the last shot where they sit still, but I haven't bothered trying to fix it with the new method of green thing because I don't really trust it yet and I need to learn how to do it better and then I'll bother trying. I'm not going to come back to it for a little while. I believe other things will solve it. We'll wait and see. So I got this crappy blend, but then, you know, the lad's there and then bang, and a gunshot. What did I want to talk about? What did I want to talk about? On the whole, I was really impressed with LTX and what I got. And, you know, I'm happy with that. It's good enough because just remember, we're not making movies here. We're making story mood boards. Let's call them those, something like that. Visual ideas, our ideas are represented. They're AI. We know they're AI. Anyone who watches them because they know they're AI. There's no point shooting for better in OSS at this time. I'm not even sure Seed Dance really does it that much better. It get quality, but it still looks like AI. So we're making structural ideas. And this now proves to me that I can revisit shots, I can revisit sequences later and improve on them while keeping the cast of characters and improving the entire thing and doing it quite quickly because I've got the baseline. And as you can see here, what happened was, sorry, we're on the usual building site. So what happened was, with the new system, AIMS 1 point whatever, I've now got a new system of first frame, middle frame, last frame, and that's all part of the batch processing. So you can pull that into Comfy UI and automate all this, and I'm going to talk about that as we go on. And I'll take that out of there because it's not a middle frame anymore. But what I did was I came back to these old shots, loaded up the first frame and the last frame. I loaded up first frame, middle frame, last frame, but then realised it was going to take ages and I didn't know the quality would be good enough. So I just went with first frame, last frame, pulled all the shots off again, kept the early ones, kept the early run, redid these, and I've kept the sequences there, and that was done a day and an afternoon. It needs improvement. It's not too bad. Now let me talk to you about, firstly let me talk to you about, no, not about that, about the hammering. No, not about that either. So this you should be familiar with. This is the 3A upscaler sampler. I'm now on to version 15 because what I've looked at, and specifically during getting this shot working better, well, it's not the best, but it works. Specifically the issue with these guys at a distance, I was having a nightmare initially, and I had to, it was a good shot to visit. I did the usual process, took it through the usual process. That was the first go at it, you know, the low res just to get the structure. Yeah, sure, got it. But yeah, it was this shot that I decided to revisit this workflow and look at what things I could use best. And I'm just going to run you through quickly what I discovered. I increased the number of steps I'm doing in the first sampler stage. So this is the workflow where you're taking a crappy video. As you can see there, look like benches and stuff. I've used it to do this this fix up. So you take your crappy video, you stick into high quality. They do need to be high quality. Don't take these as examples. High quality and preferably the right sizes matching. I've switched to 25 frames per second here. I might switch back. I'm getting a little bit confused when I'm going swapping between, but I was trying to get quality up. I've reduced these to 0.7 because I wanted to give the model more opportunity to fix things. In the Highwayman, I like to work. In the Highwayman, I'm working at 16:9 aspect ratio, so that's 480 by 277. I prefer to work to 2.39 to 1, which is wider screen, but because I've already done a lot of the Highwayman in 16:9, I thought I'd stick to it. Otherwise, I'd have to redo all the images, and I wasn't really up for that. So I'm back for now on this, and in this version 15 of it, which I'll share with you, I'm back on 16:9 aspect ratio, so watch out for that. The annoying thing is it takes a bit longer as well. Yes, so here's something new I've introduced, Cloud Scheduler. Now, I was messing around with Cloud Sampler, but it whacked the time up for me, and I really, all that bong math and stuff, like, I don't ever get greater success, but I think it's just because of the time issue. Like, if I could get it happening faster, it would be better, but I can't, so I don't. I've switched this from LCM. This is the first sampler stage. I've switched this from LCM to EULA Ancestral, and in all my tests that was the best so far. I've increased that to 9 steps, and I'm using linear quadratic, which is exactly the same as all the steps that were manually entered here, and I've left that in but bypassed it, and it's the same pattern. If you use the preview Sigmas, you'll get to see that, and the settings there, Cloud Scheduler. Linear quadratic is this curve, and 9 steps is actually like 8 steps or something when you go between the 1 and the 0, but whatever. And yeah, it's a little bit longer, but it's still, that's the faster stage because it's at 480.277, getting doubled up to, you know, with this to 960 by whatever that would be. I've got the cleaner in there. I'm needing that at the moment. Yes, I do have all the switches set. You can find those here on my website in the about section. Sorry, that's the software section. So in the about section, I'm actually using all those at the moment, just while I manage RAM and manage it, because I was having problems. I changed this, I think, to something slightly different there, but other than that, I've left it much the same. I've been changing seeds quite a lot, but sticking to the same one throughout where possible. And one thing I'm definitely now proved to myself is that you get much better results if the inbound is higher quality. So what I'm actually doing with really essential shots like this one, sorry, not that one, like this one, playing it again. But what I did with that was run it through the whole process, did it through this, put it through USDU to improve it slightly, and then I ran it through this again. Yes, I did. Now, you couldn't do that sort of thing with WAN. You can do it with LTX. I don't really understand why you can't with WAN and why you can with LTX. And that was the end result. And yes, it's an extra, you know, 16:9, I think it's 16 to 18 minutes sometimes I have to wait on this one. I am noticing a problem, by the way, which I think is Comfy UI update related, but I don't want to accuse them of anything. It might be anything, but it's been happening since I updated not that long ago. Randomly, about every 6 or 7 goes, my workflow in the last stages or before sometimes will suddenly slow down and take 40 minutes to complete. And I've been tracking it through my trusty methodologies, all this and tracking it, and there's no clues. This is because OBS is running, but there's no clues whatsoever what's causing the problems. So I'm a little bit suspicious of what's going on there, and it's like I've yet to figure it out. About, you know, the fact that it's randomly doing it, so that's why I've been adding the switches in and getting it stripped back to, you know, cleaning everything up. There's a clean up here as well before it runs again, and it happens in the batch process as well, and that's why it's annoying, because, you know, every 7 or not religiously every 7, but it's about that on average, sometimes less. Yeah, it's getting a really long slow, and then the next one will run fine. So that's what's also weird about it. I'm not quite, it could be Windows retaining memory or something, I don't know at this stage. Anyway, but yeah, this I've tweaked this workflow a bit in version 15. I think it's version 15 now. Let me just check that by going to save it. Video pipeline, yeah, version 15, 3A, version 15. I update these with every new model, but I'll actually share this to you directly, as well as a couple of the other ones, this green frame replace thing. Did I talk through that? I didn't really talk too much through it, so I'll do that quickly now. How am I doing for time? 30 minutes. Okay, so we're now starting the green screen, green frame, IC LoRa union merge green LoRa workflow. Sorry, I took 30 minutes getting to it. It's not a winner yet, but it's got legs, it's got abilities. What I basically do, first thing I do is in DaVinci, I cut out the chunk where there's a problem. So it's going from this shot into this shot, and it's the blend between, and I wanted to fix them. And what I do is just put a green frames in for that section, boom, and we're out again. So that's what's going on there. This shot, I've overlaid some of it with green frames, overlaid some of the start of the next one with green frames, because it was, as I said, the drone shots were slowing down at the end and starting up and speeding up at the beginning, so I wanted to have that and try and make a smooth shot that would run through cleanly. And I was doing it with the trees. The trees worked fairly well. With this one, where is it? The best I got to was, I think, this. No, that was problems. That was when I was running it through this. This actually does that, this sort of stuff in, and I'm not really sure why, because at that point in the proceedings, we actually had blank. So we've got that, boom, blank, 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 bang, back in. So it's adding those in, and I've tried tweaking things. Let's just disable that. I've tried tweaking things in the pre-process, increase the strength of the image, decrease what I believe is the strength of this image, which is the depth map coming in, but it was still doing it a bit. So I don't know, I think you could tweak your way into a successful result. Sorry, got all the sound there that it adds in itself. I did switch that out from being ancestral CFGPP because I had problems with that model, and switched it to that, so that's probably not great. But what I did in the end anyway was, you change the size of the settings here. I put information in here, but what I did if I did this smaller, it didn't do the all the weird trees in it. Look at this. Smaller, it actually did it fine. Got a bit of a roaming tree there, but let's look at that again. This tree moves in, but as a base structure, that was speed and everything was okay. So I thought, oh, I'll try it. So I got the image print screenshots out from the start and end, because I was only clipping 121 frames, and you've got to be careful to keep to the frame size that LTX works with. And then I shoved that one I've just showed you in. I shoved that one. Oh, I'll get there eventually. Shoved that one I just showed you in here. As you can see, I've done it the wrong size. I did it at the wrong aspect ratio, so that probably didn't help. But then used that frame and that frame, which was the 121 frame. You can see there at the end. Set the sizing to 16:9, so that's going to squish it up. You know, I'm asking for trouble doing stuff like that, but basically what's going on in that middle bit, but not all the prompt that I used before. So keeping the prompt just to the basics, and I ran it through and let it finish, and that gave me this. You know, that worked surprisingly well. So that was kind of cool. But what we had trouble with was these switcheroo horses and things like that. So, and that's what you saw that I blended in the other one. So there's ways to do this. And this was by, let me just recap that because I got a bit confusing there, didn't I? I put some information in the IC LoRa here about things to consider and what I've figured out so far. And where to get the LoRa. It's this guy Sirax. I'll put a link in the post. So you need a first frame to drive it, and then you put your 121 frame video in with the green screen bit in, the green frames in. You use this merge LoRa will respond to those green frames. The IC union control LoRa and just your standard LTX driver there, and all your standard LTX stuff here. Make sure that's switched to false so that the reference image is used. I prefer to use depth anything. There's probably even better ones out there. There is actually a better one, but I can't remember its name. You've also got pose and canny edge, but it's not applicable in this setup, especially because I don't want the edges. I actually want it to fix anything there, which is where the green frames are. And then I've been fiddling around with this and that, these settings there, and this was about the best when I did it to, as I said, to sizes other than 480 by 277. I've got all this grey stuff in there, but when I did it at 480 277 I didn't. I got that, and then with that result, and even with the moving tree, I took that to trusty old 3A dual sampler and ran it through with the first frame, last frame definition. Really, I should have checked what seeds I used with the other one with that exact shot just to make it stay correct. And then we got that out, and I think it's got the jumpy horse, yeah, turning like a dog, isn't it? But it works, and then I could use that as the splice over the join of those two frames, and it kind of worked. Works at the beginning, doesn't work so much at the end, and I'm not really sure why, and it's something to look at. But yeah, I'll share it with you for now, and that's coming up on 40 minutes, and I'm sure none of you have stuck that out. I wouldn't. But yeah, next I'm going to be talking about batch workflowing, and I'm going to give you some examples with yet another musical I've written and called Black Magic, and I'm going to do the opening sequence using batch workflow, and I'm going to show you how I process that now with a custom node in Comfy UI while I sleep. And then after that, I'll probably get back to the dialogue scene for the Highwayman, which is also quite exciting. That'll do for now. Thanks for stopping by.